Hi everybody and welcome to OBS Obsessed, the show all about OBS Studio. My name's John Lacey. Today on the show we're going to be talking about using OBS Studio for podcasting and podcasters. And perhaps not in the way that you may necessarily assume, but we are going out live to all the various places. So if you are watching out live, let me know where you're watching from. It's great to have your company today. So we're going to get stuck into some of the things that OBS Studio can do for you as a podcaster. And I guess, first of all, I kind of want to... There's a couple of things I think we need to get out of the way, first of all. And one of those is... This is not going to be one of those pieces of content where I tell you, as an audio podcaster, you have to be doing video. That's a very personal choice. You need to weigh up the pros and cons for yourself. And I think it's really important that you kind of make a decision about what your deliverables will be and what they will look like. And sort of not listen too much to the random opinions of people on social media, because there are lots of people pushing their own agendas and you really need to decide what's appropriate for you. So... and hello to Roy, Czech troublemaker who's watching from his couch. Great to have your company today, Roy. Thank you for joining us. All right, so we're going to talk about podcasting and what we can do in terms of OBS. And again, these are just options, and Roy is noting that I'm on his TV, which is probably a little scary to have me that large a screen. I shudder to imagine what that looks like, but hopefully it's not too traumatizing for you, Roy. All right. So first of all, like, you don't need to do anything you don't want to do. And that's, you know, if you don't have a boss or, you know, a sponsor telling you you have to do a particular thing, it's all up to you and you get to choose. And a lot of people have a lot of feelings about this. And I think it's okay to do whatever you want to do. So first of all, we're going to leave that to one side. But the other thing too is today's show isn't really about doing a podcast in OBS Studio, although that is something you definitely could do. You could create solo content, you could do that live, you could do that pre-recorded for an editing situation. Those are all options that are available to you, and you kind of need to decide what you're interested in exploring and go from there. But let's check in with a few more of these comments. Saeed, hello, welcome. I know it's very late, although I think you told me it was a little bit earlier than usual, due to the joys of daylight savings starting and ending in all of the places. But Said writes, I've been thinking a lot about OBS setups for podcasts lately. Funny how serendipity works. Absolutely. And Said writes, don't listen to people on social media, said the man on social media. It is one of those things, like, social media does give us this great option to be found and discovered and shared, and we can communicate with people and make new friends. But it can also really militarize the FOMO. It can make you feel bad about the things you're doing. And I never want to be that person. I don't want to discourage people from having a go, because the only way you're going to get better is by starting. And, you know, it's really important that we kind of put our perfectionistic tendencies to one side and just have a go. And you will improve over time. And I guess that's the other thing I wanted to say. Like, it almost doesn't matter if you're doing an audio podcast or a video show or a blog series. Like, all of this stuff takes time and effort and energy. And it probably is going to take a lot longer than you imagine to build up any kind of following. And I mention that only to set some expectations, because I feel like there are so many marketers out there, like, pay me $10,000 and I'll give you the secret to social media fame and success. And, like, it doesn't work like that. It never works like that. All right, so let's talk about some of the things that we could do. And again, like I said earlier, this isn't really about doing an entire show in OBS, although you certainly can do that. And I guess I want to do a show about that in the future, but some of the tools that might be useful for you in terms of bringing guests would be things like Video Ninja, which is free, and also ping.gg, which is a paid product. You can actually bring in your guests directly into OBS. You can set them up with their own scenes. You can bring those in together as nested scenes. And that's essentially what I used to do with the video and live streaming show with Sam Proof. And we'd also bring in some guests in that fashion. And I think we will have a guest in a couple of weeks' time, but I'm not going to tell you too much about that. And I'll have to revisit all those things I used to do. And I don't actually have a guesting option in this particular OBS Obsessed OBS profile, if you know what I mean. So that's something I'll have to think about a little bit, but that's okay. All right, so in terms of OBS, and again, I feel like the two people that are actually in the chat will know this already, but just in case somebody's watching the replay later on, let's head over to our screen share. OBS Studio is free and open source software, and it's available for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. If you want to download this and play with it, it's available from obsproject.com. You can literally just download one of the operating system buttons here and go from there. But if you want some more granular options, there is a download option at the top of the screen, which will give you things that let you run a portable version of OBS if that's something you want to do. So I've got a second version of OBS running over here, and we're going to play with this. So I guess first of all, and I think this is really important that we think about, because if you're ever a guest on somebody else's content, it's often a really good idea to keep some sort of local recording of that, of yourself. And that's for a few different reasons. First of all, it can be really useful to create your own content out of. Again, just maybe let the person whose show you're appearing on know that you're using it for that purpose. But the other thing too, like if you're speaking to media or journalists or academics and you just want a record of what you actually said in case there is some misunderstanding and something slightly misleading goes to print or whatever, you can actually go back to your original recording. So this is OBS, and here we've got our scenes dock, our sources dock, we've got the audio mixer, some scenes transitions, and behind me, and I'm always conscious of the fact that I'm skewing this, and I might even move this out of the way for today. Let's put it over here on the top left-hand side. We have our controls. So we've got things to start streaming, start recording, start the replay buffer, start the virtual camera, which we will talk about today, studio mode, settings, and exit. So, and I guess the crux of this software is that you can stream, you can go live, you can record, and you can use the studio, the virtual camera. And the virtual camera will actually change how you show up in other pieces of software that use webcam. So it could be that, you know, you're arranging elements in your webcam scene and you're going out to Zoom or Microsoft Teams or you know, other streaming platforms, Restream Studio, StreamYard, whatever. You can actually bring your own sort of virtual camera there and bring it into that software. So I might just move this back because I don't think we're going to need this too much at the moment. So what we can do, first of all, is if you want to record something that is just yourself, or just your side of the conversation. And again, it could be that this is solo content. It could be that you're just recording your own part of the conversation. We need to think about the sources that we incorporate here. So if I go down to the sources and I hit the little add button to add a source, and I can go to video capture device, this is the point at which you might bring in your web camera. And again, I'm going to give you some other options. So if you don't want to appear on camera, stay with me. Don't run away just yet. So I will just say my webcam, and it's a good idea to give these things names, and I'll click OK. Normally, this is the point at which you'd bring in your own web camera or video camera or whatever it happens to be. I am going to be cheating a little bit because I really only have the one camera here today and it's already in use. So I'm going to grab the OBS virtual camera from the other side of my setup and click on this, and that'll bring me in here. So the other thing that could potentially happen when you add your camera is that you'll be asked about some audio options as well. So generally speaking, I wouldn't use the audio built into a web camera unless, or you know, an external camera, unless you actually did have a special mic physically connected to it. So if you wanted to, and again, it's not actually an option here because the virtual camera doesn't include the audio. But essentially we could say, okay, use a custom audio device, and I could bring in my Rodecaster Pro, which is down here, which is what's popped in automatically. But generally speaking, what I would probably do, in fact, I'm gonna bring that audio device in just to pretend for a second. So just indulge me because this is the only way I can really show this. But if you did have, say, a Logitech C920 webcam, which does have audio, the thing I'd probably want you to do is accept the audio that's coming into it and then actually just hit the mute button in the audio mixer, because we don't really want to capture that audio. It's always going to be too far away from your mouth to capture good audio. So we can turn that off, and then what I'd probably do is go and find my audio separately. So Again, it depends on what your audio capture device is. In this case, I'm going to go to add a new source, which is audio input capture. And I'll call this Rodecaster because my audio is coming in from the Rodecaster Pro, the original one. I choose what this is. So I'll go with the Rodecaster Pro Stereo. And then I've got my video and my webcam. And once you've got that there, like, you know, the minute you are talking to somebody via one of these other pieces of software, you can literally just come into start recording and it will record everything you say until you stop. In fact, let me show you. I'm going to hit the start recording button and you'll see that it changes from start recording to stop recording, and it's blue, and that just lets us know that that is currently being recorded. So that in itself can be really, really useful. But let's imagine, and this is kind of a very popular thing on LinkedIn at the moment. LinkedIn had what they called audio events. They decided not enough people were using them. They've kind of taken them away. There's a bit of a weird stopgap measure with people doing LinkedIn Lives, which is essentially the video live streaming option, and just turning off their camera, which I personally find a little weird. But, you know, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. So let's imagine that I don't want my webcam on here. So maybe I haven't added this. Maybe I've deleted it. I'm just going to toggle the visibility to get rid of it. So we've got that there. I'm going to actually jump out of this for a second because I need to address this comment. And I don't know if Roy has spies. But he writes, ooh, a good episode idea would be to talk about using OBS Virtual Video with StreamYard, Restream, Zoom, and others when guesting on someone's stream. I'm literally going to do that in 2 weeks' time, or a version of that. It's going to be predominantly about Zoom, but the ideas are pretty easy to apply to other things as well. So stay with me because we're going to do a little bit of this today, but also in a couple of weeks' time. So I don't know if you've been talking to people, but that's bizarrely accurate about what's coming in the very near future. So thank you. All right. So let's go back to our screen share though. And let's imagine we don't want our webcam on. Maybe we physically don't own one. Maybe it's broken. Maybe we're just not having a good hair day. Whatever the case may be, we could put something else here. And you could put literally anything else here. And I guess that's the thing I want to talk to you about, is that we can combine a few different elements, or we can actually just grab some stuff from graphics software that maybe were designed earlier. So I guess the first thing I would say is it's often a good idea to start with a block of color. So if you go to your sources and go add a new source, we've got this great thing called color source, and we can give this a name if we wanted to. I'm going to be lazy and not do that. And we can literally just put in a block of color. So I'll grab this orange. And then at least that way the frame isn't black or blank. So we could do that. We can come in, we can add text, we can add images and things. So I guess the alternative in some ways might be if I were to bring in an image that I've created for my podcast, for example, whatever that might look like. And I've got so many images. I'm just trying to find out the right one. In fact, actually, they'll be under episodes, won't they? Yep. Just give me 1 second. So, and this is something, because I started with my audio podcast, Build a Presentation Muscle, which I will use extensively as examples today. And what I would do is I would create special imagery for each episode. And it's very basic. It's a very simple template. It was something I threw together in PowerPoint. But if I just drag this onto my canvas, and in fact, I'll right click on this and go transform, and I will say fit to screen. I think these images are actually 720. They should be 1080, but never mind. That's fine for our purposes today. So essentially, I've got the artwork for my podcast. I've got some text in here. I've got episode 1. And I literally just dragged that into OBS and let it go, and you'll see that it created its own source, and it's using the file name as the source name, which is probably not the best, but like in a rush that can certainly work. The other way of doing this is to actually go down to the add source option, go to images or image, say I'll call this one artwork. We can go and browse for our file, and I happen to know that this is in here. And then I can click OK, and that will be there. So we could have, and again, this is this is a really great way of recording yourself, just your audio and whatever you want here. And that's not to say you can't take this recorded video later and then put it into your video editing software and change all of this. Like you can add stuff over the top of any part of the video. You could strip out the audio alone if you wanted to record the audio in OBS. That's another option as well. So there's a lot of different things that we can do here. All right, let's check in with the chat because I think a new person has arrived. Let's go back to here. Tech Troublemaker writes, it's called knowing what your community wants. Absolutely. And hello to Ender Trading, who's joining us. Great to have your company. So today we're talking about podcasting and how podcasters might like to play with OBS. And again, I'm not saying you uproot everything you're already doing and change your approach, but I just want to give you OBS as another set of tools in your creative toolbox so you can play with them. And, you know, it's one of those things you need to decide what's appropriate for you in your show. So we saw how we can, and I guess the other thing too that maybe I didn't articulate earlier was simply that once you've got that artwork there, you've got your audio there, you might want to adjust the volume. I feel like I'm a little hot in here, but and again, I appreciate you can't actually see the audio mixer because it's behind my head. But essentially I had a few people tell me that my audio is very quiet on these streams. So I think I've almost overcompensated in the other direction. So hopefully it's not distorting or anything, but let me know. But essentially once we've got that here, and it could be this artwork, it could be this artwork, it could be the webcam itself. We have all those options ready to go. Once you've got that, you could start recording, say whatever you want to say, stop recording, and then you've got a video recording. And that could be for the episode, that could be a teaser about the episode. It's a really easy way to create a simple video, especially if you're sort of seated at your computer. It's a great way of working. All right, so we've got that as well. The other thing we should talk about, and I'm just giving you options. Don't feel like you need to run off and implement all of these things at once because that would potentially be quite overwhelming. I'm going to go to atom.tv, and I'm sure a lot of people in this audience have heard me talk about this in the past, but I think it's really cool. Atom is a company that produces a number of different products for live streaming. Their main one is the Atom app. I've never used it, and I actually had somebody from the company ask me if I was using it so I could make some tutorials, and I'm like, no, I've never touched it. I'm sure it's probably wonderful, but I don't know what it is. It's a lot of automation and scripting and stuff, and I kind of use different tools for those things anyway. But the thing I do love, and we've spoken about this on other shows, is the vertical and potentially even the multi-stream. So if you wanted to go out to different places all at once, you could do that. But let's talk about the vertical, because I like this, and I think this is, I can't overstate how useful this can be, because a lot of the time, if you are doing a podcast and you've got your horizontal video, the next step that in terms of repurposing that a lot of people want to do is actually just make some sort of vertical clip. And, you know, we can certainly stretch and resize the video to fit. That's something that we can do. But it can be really useful just to actually have a vertical variant of what we're recording. So again, when we download this for free, we'll get a few extra docs and we'll be able to do different things with this. And I guess we'll just go back to OBS. And I've already got this installed. So I'm just going to put this controls back where it was. We're going to go to our docs, and we've got a number of different docs that come in once we've installed this. We've got the vertical scene, which is its own set of scenes. We've got our vertical sources, again, same sort of idea. And we can resize these docs and move them to different places if that makes more sense. We can detach them, that's all cool. We do also have vertical scene transitions. I'm not going to worry about that right now, but the vertical one is the canvas itself. So over here, again, slightly behind my head, you'll see the vertical canvas. So if we wanted to make a, and I'll check in with those comments in a second, but if I wanted to, and let's just so we're clear, so we're all on the same page here, I'm going to bring back my webcam and my audio. So this is me in horizontal. I might even, let's just resize this a little bit. Although, I don't know, that's going to help us terribly much. So what I can do is down in my vertical sources, I'll go add, and I will go to video capture device. We've got an option here to add a new one, but in this case, I kind of want to use my existing webcam. So I'm going to go to where it says my webcam, click OK, and you'll see it's here. It's not particularly sized to any great thing here, so I can sort of grab the corners, I can resize this, and I can reposition it. And often I will have like a bar underneath just solid color down here. And you'll see like there definitely becomes a point, especially because I'm going out of one version of OBS into another version with the virtual camera. So I don't know, like that kind of feels a little bit too zoomed in. So I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to go to transitions. I'm just going to go reset transition. And probably what I would do if I had more time is I would actually spend a little bit of time working with this. Some things I've done in the past is to actually leave enough space at the top of the screen so I can inject a horizontal video in there. So that could have been my co-host speaking. It could actually just be the artwork for the episode. So let's just imagine that's our use case for today. And I'll go in and insert an image. And the thing that, okay, there we go. So I'm going to create a new image and I'm going to say, in fact, I'm going to cheat a little bit. Let's just use one of those existing images. So I'll go add image and I'm going to grab the one that says artwork. And again, I'm going to right click on that and go transform and maybe just go fit to screen and just move this to the top of the screen. And there, that way I can sort of bring in my branding. I can bring in everything that I want to use. And also I can go in and I can bring in my audio as well. So we want to make sure the things that we have in common kind of need to be in both places. So I'll just go Rodecaster there. And the great thing about this, if I click on the settings, which is slightly behind my head, so I might even just move this out of the way. Let's move it to the left so you can see this. So there are settings on the Atom plugin. My favorite setting for this one, and I've just got to remember exactly where it is. I think it's under recording. This one here says start and stop recording when main OBS starts and stop recording. So what I want you to do, I'm going to hit the start recording button, which again is behind my head. So use your imagination a little bit. But what I want you to see is over here, there is actually a recording button. It says record vertical. It'll record both of these at the same time. So I can say start recording. Hello, welcome to the show today. We're talking about XYZ and the importance of XYZ and why you should definitely buy XYZ. And you'll see that this is recording over here. This is also recording down here. I realize you can't see it. It's behind my head, but trust me on this. I hit that one stop button and it'll stop recording both of these. And now like in real time, I've got vertical and horizontal versions of these clips that I can reuse and repurpose. And I can't overstate how useful that can be. Like, and because we've got both of these, if I wanted to go back to use the original horizontal version, I could. If I wanted to use the vertical version, I could. If I want to bring either of these into video editing software, I can certainly run with that. But let's check in with the comments because I feel like there's a lot happening without me. All right. Roy and Ender are having a chat. Okay, this is cool. So Ender writes, OBS is great for a backup screen recording if I'm using other browser-based options. Yes, and I probably didn't articulate this too well, but depending on the kind of software you're using to have a conversation about this, it might be happening in real time and it might be slightly at the mercy of your internet connection. And you might like, and again, I don't mean to pick on Zoom, and that we'll definitely have somebody defending Zoom probably in a couple of weeks' time on the show. But, you know, it's very common to hear that sort of gargled sort of audio that fades in and out a little bit and it's a little messy. The great thing about local recordings is that if anything happens to that live recording, you've got the original to go back to, and it's going to be a better recording. Like, it just will. It doesn't need to rely on the success of your internet connection at all. And I should say too, there are some pieces of software out there that will do local recordings and do different things. Like, you know, it'll do the live recording of both of you in real time, and it'll also do a local recording that can be synced to the cloud. So that's another thing. But truthfully, especially if you're making solo content, most people don't know this because they they get really invested in browser-based tools like Descript and things like that and StreamYard, and they assume they always need to be connected to the internet to do any kind of video recording. And the truth is you don't. So if you're just recording locally, you can do that on your computer. You don't even need an internet connection at all at that point until you need to upload it. So that's something to keep in mind. Roy said multiverse, and I don't know, maybe I misspoke when I meant to say multi-stream, but I don't know what that's about. Multiverse got quick, the graphics suck. Okay, Enter has a real question here, so let's go and do this one. So does OBS have light mode? Kind of. So let's go back to OBS. I'll turn off this comment actually because you'll be able to see more of the screen this way. So it doesn't really have sort of a light mode as such, but what you can do is if you go to the file menu and then to the settings, we've got appearance, and they have different themes and styles. So at the moment, I believe you can download more of these themes from obsproject.com. I never really have. But essentially, within this Yummy style, we've got different color schemes. So if I click on this, you'll see that you probably won't see it actually, but the buttons behind me to start streaming and stuff have gone blue. Much of the rest is actually sort of even a darker black. There's classic, which is different shades of gray and black. We've got the default, which is the thing that you normally see when I do these streams. We've got gray. And we've got the one that you're potentially looking for. It's called light. It takes a little moment to catch up that one, but it does look different. I don't know that I love it, but it is an option. So again, whatever you want to do. There's also last one, Rachni, which is sort of, it's dark, but it has a little bit more contrast. Like it has sort of aqua buttons, and certain things that are highlighted seem to be in a vaguely purpley maroon color. So there are those options. I'm sure there are many others. I'm sure you could actually make your own if you wanted to. I tend to stick with this default just because it's what most people will see when they're actually recording. Oh, once they've downloaded the software, I mean. So we've got that there. All right, so we've spoken about how you can record your end of the conversation. We've spoken about how we can do that with video, with images. We've also spoken a little bit about the vertical options. I'm going to make the vertical options go away because that's kind of all I wanted to show you in terms of the vertical options today. And again, if you're just doing a recording of yourself, it's often a really good idea just to keep this really simple and then just use this as a raw material that you can edit in video editing software later on. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to close these docs. It's going to tell me each time I close something that I've closed something. So I'll tick that to get rid of that message. All right, so Saeed does write that there are some themes to download with high contrast or more minimalistic. Yeah, absolutely. Hello to Business Growth Ready, who writes, dark mode is best as it doesn't cast bright light on you from the screen in the middle of a live stream or recording. That's, that's a valid point. I must admit, my monitors are actually a fair distance away from me, so I don't really have that problem too much. And I do have a lot of, my Elgato key lights are doing a lot of filling of light as well. So I've got that as well. So, all right. One thing that I don't know if I really articulated particularly well, but I think it's worth revisiting even if I did, is that we have this magical thing called the virtual camera. And essentially, when you start building things in your scene, and your multiple scenes potentially, so if I come in here and I maybe add some text, and I will say, I'm just going to go johnlacey.com. That's my text. I don't know if I can put yeah, okay, cool. I'm going to write my text here. I'm going to select my font, which will probably be Open Sans something or other. Let's try semi-bold. I could change the size of this. I can change colors, whatever I want. It doesn't really matter too much for our purposes. So I've got this here. And again, I'm just making this up as I go along. So probably what I should do instead is grab some real assets from my podcast, which I do have as graphics. So let me just see. So this one, for example, I'm going to drag and drop this onto my screen. And it's ridiculously large. So first of all, I'm going to right click on that and go transform, and I will say fit to screen. And that's actually the logo of my my podcast. So I guess a few things, and again, I feel like a lot of the people in the chat will know this already, but just in case there are beginners out there, the order of these sources determines what is on top. So the higher you are in this list, on top you will be. So in my case, if I kind of, and normally I could actually put this logo behind me because I've got a green screen, but in this case, it's kind of, it has that aqua background built into it. So I can't actually do that here, but what I can do, I can just, I'm going to drag the corner in, going to make this smaller. So I'll say, build a presentation muscle. I'll bring in my johnlacey.com text. Might make it a little bit smaller, move it to the other side. We could bring in a QR code. You know, we could do a number of different things. So if we just pretend that this is the extent of my podcast promotion, I can select these couple of items, and I just held down the Shift key or the Control key. In fact, I think Shift will get everything from beginning click to end click, where Control will just get the ones you click on individually, which could be useful to know. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select both of those. I'm going to right click on them, and I'm going to say group selected items, and I will say podcast promo. And the great thing about this is if I'm on a live session, if I'm on a Zoom call and somebody asks me about my podcast, I can sort of click on this and those things will pop up in real time, and I can talk about it, and then I can make them go away. And again, that's literally just toggling the visibility of those grouped items. So we can set up Stream Deck Stream Deck keys or keyboard shortcuts to make those things happen. But the great thing about this is if I actually start my virtual camera, whatever happens in this OBS frame will happen wherever I'm using that as a virtual camera. So I can set this up and I can have all my bells and whistles and background images and QR codes and URLs and calls to action. And I can share that in Zoom. I can share that in Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, just about anything that can use a web camera. So, and that's really just a matter of clicking Start Virtual Camera. I'm not going to do that today because I've actually got another instance of this virtual camera with this Aqua background version of me. There's several levels of abstraction, but essentially all you need to do is hit that start button. You go into your software, you select OBS Virtual Camera as your camera, and you can go from there. The one thing that is really important to let you know about the virtual camera, though, it is very much only for visuals. So if you're playing videos, if you're doing sound effects in OBS, you'll have to think about a different routing option for that. And there are sort of virtual audio cables that are available out there. So you can definitely try that out and let me know how you get on. I've never really used them. I've never really felt the need. In some ways, like it's not the way I would play a video, for example. And I do have a sound pad on my Rodecaster. So if I want to bring in sound effects or music, that's usually how I work. But I feel like Saeed probably uses them. So remind me to grill him about that in a future episode. All right, so we've got those different things. We can do local recordings. We can create those clips. All right, let's go back to the comments. So Ender says, thanks, I never knew about the light mode, so I'll use this from now on. Yep, absolutely. And again, it's entirely up to you how you want this to look. And I think, as Saeed mentioned earlier, there are definitely other themes and options you can download from OBS Project. In fact, let me just see if I can find some of them. So let's go back over here. And I almost threw my mouse off my desk, but I caught it just in time, so I'm probably improving. So this is obsproject.com. This is the forums. Here we've got the themes. So this is where you can go and find different themes. Probably worthwhile checking the version is compatible with the version that you want to do. So if I look at Neon, for example, it's actually pretty elegant. It does have 3 styles to choose from, even with this one. So We've got a light version there, a dark version, and a sort of a black and blue version. And they compare the old buttons to the new buttons. And let's pick another one at random. Vibrant green sounds intriguing. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know if I would be running out and installing that one, but it's interesting nonetheless. There's melancholy, which is a light theme apparently. And that's interesting. I don't know. Like I said before, I very much stick with the default just because that's what people are using, and I'm making sort of tutorials for people, so that's where I want to stay. Let's just have a look at this YouNow material ones. This is material design and YouNow dark mode inspired theme. Some pictures. Doesn't look dramatically different to anything else I've seen, except it does feature some green buttons. So, I mean, you could probably, there are at least 3 pages of those, so you could probably spend a lot of time playing with all of that stuff if you wanted to. All right, so say it says I use VB audio virtual cable. Yes, it seems to be the popular one. And like I said, I've never used it, but maybe I should play with it at one point in the future. It's funny, and I swear I'm not bagging on Ecamm when I say this, but the first time I was invited on as a guest to an Ecamm show, the audio just fell apart. And I don't actually think it was Ecamm. I think it was a piece of hardware that the host was using, and it was new and they didn't really understand how it was working. But the thing that confused me is I had like 7 options to nominate my microphone, my audio, and they were all labeled microphone. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I'm really hoping that they've resolved that particular issue. And this was years ago, so there's a really good chance they have. So, but it's a weird thing because Tanya Smith, Stream Like a Boss, was talking about her process. And I remembered that I sort of did a pre-live sort of a call with her just to double check that because I was so nervous about it. And again, tying back to today's show beautifully, it's one of those things that we did that conversation, and because the audio was garbled in such a way on the live, there was no way to save it, and I was kicking myself because it would have been so easy for me to do a recording locally in Zoom, sorry, not in Zoom, in OBS, or even on the Rodecaster. Like, I have a little SD card in there. I can just hit the record button and capture the audio that way. So again, that's the other thing, like, stuff can go wrong, and if you have multiple points of failure and sort of backup options, that can really help a lot. Because there will be times when the audio will just be a problem, and there'll be times when the camera plays up, and if you have options, it's not a waste of the energy and the time that you've put into that moving forward. So just keep that in mind. I must admit, I am very much improvising today's show, and I feel like I had some very specific ideas about, that's what it was. Okay. So yes, let's go back. All right. So again, these are a couple of plugins that I feel like I've spoken about before. So let's go back to our screen share. So I kind of mentioned that LinkedIn Audio went away. They've got LinkedIn Live, and LinkedIn has kind of worked with companies like Restream and StreamYard to create a new layout that is optimized really for people that don't want to turn on their cameras. And I do find that a little weird, but I kind of wanted to explore maybe how we could do other interesting things on your screen that maybe aren't actually your video camera. And as a side note, I'd love it if you could turn your camera on, but if you're not there yet, let's just talk about it. So I'll just call this the no camera scene. I'm creating a new scene. Down here, added the new scene. I've got no sources in this scene. So again, if there's anything I want to use in this sources, I can do that here. So first of all, I probably want to bring my audio input capture. And again, it gives me the option to create new or add existing. In this case, I want to add existing. So I want to bring the Rodecaster. So at least my audio is here. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to bring in a new instance of my camera. And I know I said I wasn't going to use my camera, but just indulge me for a second. So I'm going to actually bring in, I'm going to use this source code plugin, which is something you can get from obsproject.com. Essentially, it'll give me the ability to make a copy of one of my other sources. So I'm going to say copy of camera. And clone source will be source. And I will go to, I think I called it my webcam. And again, if it had audio, I'd bring that in, but in this case it doesn't, so I'll just turn that off. It's not important. So now, oh dear, said something. I'll address that in a second. So the other thing we can do is that if you wanted to, we can right click and we go to filters. Again, I've downloaded Advanced Mask, which is another thing you can get from OBS Project. And here, this essentially lets us mask out our source. And this could be an image, this could be, whatever. It could be a video. So in this case, I've got the mask here. I kind of want to make this one a shape. I want to make it a circle. Again, I'm always not entirely centered when I do this. So the great thing about this software is that I can sort of resize and reposition the element of this circle just by dragging the center X and Y around. And I've got that there. So maybe you don't want to fill the entire thing of the camera. You don't want to fill the entire frame of the canvas. We can definitely do that. And the other thing that's really cool, and maybe I should go into OBS Projects and show you this one. So we go to plugins. I think it's called Wave Visualizer. All right, maybe that's not right. What is it called? Let me just look in OBS. So waveform visualizer. Okay, so I'm going to search. And a couple of tips about this. And again, I realize I'm obscuring part of the screen. So let me just resize this ever so slightly. But if I go to my search options, I can go waveform visualizer. And this will search everywhere, which isn't actually that useful. What I want to do, because I'm already in the plugin section, I'll change this from everywhere to this category. And we will go search. Okay, and I'm pretty sure this is the one I want. It's just called waveform. Waveform 1.8.1. And this essentially, it'll create waveforms of a whole bunch of different options in different styles to actually, to make sort of visualize, like literally what it says on the tin. It'll visualize the waveforms. So from the audio it's hearing. So if I go in here and I can add this source because I've already installed this plugin, go to add waveform visualizer. I'm just going to leave it like that. We do need to set up some options here. So first of all, we need to say, what is the audio source for this? And in this case, it will be the Rodecaster Pro. But it could be something different. You could have a pre-recorded video that you want to do, but you can sort of see that this is already bouncing around. I'm going to normalize the volume here because that'll just make it a little bit more dynamic and interesting. And I can change my display mode. So this is pretty cool. If we start with this curve that you're seeing right now, I could change this to bars. So those are the vertical bars. You could have stepped bars, which are like little bricks on top of each other. I could do a level meter, which is probably the least exciting, but it can be quite useful actually. So it could be that maybe you actually have this projected on something the audience doesn't see, but it just reassures you that your audio is actually on and working. Because I know we've all had that experience where we've figured out halfway through something that we were muted. We've got the stepped level meter, which again is the same sort of brick option, and the waveform, which is experimental apparently. Ooh, that's really trippy. I'm not going to leave that one on. Let's go back to... let's go back to curve for the moment. And we have a lot of options in here. So this is really, you can play to your heart's content. I'm going to try, I don't think this is going to work terribly well, but I'm going to just arbitrarily make this 1920 by 1080. So that'll kind of fill the frame. And again here, I don't know that this is particularly useful as a curve. So what we might even do is we'll change this to bars. And again, I would actually put this underneath my web camera so you could see that I'm talking. But again, we can do this for a static image. We could get rid of the camera entirely. We could bring in just a photo of myself here. We could do that as well. I guess the thing, and I'm kind of a little confused because I'm sure there's a great option in here to curve this properly. But I don't know where that is off the top of my head. And I've done a whole bunch of shows on this before. So I guess, mirror frequency access, no, radial. There we go. That's what I'm looking for, the radial version. And I can also invert the radial direction as well. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. All right, cool. Let's just click OK. I turned off my camera, so let's bring that back here. And probably what I would want to do, and I might need to really play with this to figure out exactly how this is going to work, but I kind of want it to come out around me a little bit. And again, that might be, like, a lot of that is missing the mark. So I might even just resize my camera here, make that a little bit smaller. I could potentially just put this in the middle here and have this go around. So if we go back into our waveform visualizer options, we've got sort of maximum gain. We can play with that as well. Logarithmic, mirror frequency axis. There we go. That's kind of cool. Those two in together, because it's got that it's sort of matched either side, which is quite interesting, quite dynamic. But I guess the other thing that we can do too, and radial rotation, what does that do? Okay, it moves where that's positioned. Cool. We've got so many options. In fact, I probably wouldn't worry about most of these unless you're really pedantic. But the thing that is cool is we can change the colors of this. So we've got render modes, we've got solid, we've got line, we've got gradients, we've got pulse, and we've got range. So if I go to line, you'll see that's actually the outline of that shape. And we could change the color of the outline. We've got solid, which is what we were on before. We've got gradient. So let me go back to solid first. And you'll see that we've got three colors here. For solid, we can only change the base color. Again, if I had a particular hex value or something I wanted in there, I'm just going to pick a random red for today's purposes. Move this to the side for a second, and you can see that that's around me talking. If I change this to gradients, then we actually have the base color and the crest color. So I could go maybe red to yellow, for example. And then I've got this rather trippy effect as well. And I'm assuming that the pulse, okay, the pulse doesn't give us that either. Maybe the range. Okay, so the range gives us a middle color. So if we really wanted to, we could maybe put an orange in the middle of those things. So it's just a way of sort of making the audio a little bit more interesting visually. And again, that's going to work better for some applications than others, but I think it's kind of really cool and fun to play with. And again, that's very much in that round curve shapes. And again, like stepped bars is pretty cool. That's even, I think in some ways that's even cooler. So we've got the curved approach applied to those stepped bars, but let's see what else we got. Got the level meter. That's not going to be very interesting for our purposes, but the waveform experimental, that's very trippy. In fact, I'm sorry, that probably would cause seizures. I don't recommend that. So we can go to, I think the step bars really is quite elegant. We can actually change all the numbers with those. So if you don't want to have your camera fill the whole space, or if you don't want to use your camera at all, you could very easily just replace this with a static image. And again, combined with the virtual camera, you can bring that into Zoom, you can bring that into, Restream or StreamYard, any of those things. And you can switch between scenes too, which is something I kind of take for granted. But again, if there are any newbies watching, they may not know that's the reason we have these different scenes, is that we can easily switch between them. And if you have a physical Stream Deck, you can set up buttons to do that to make that even easier. We can also set up keyboard shortcuts as well. So there's all kinds of stuff that you can do. And again, it is one of those things that there are so many options out there, and I don't want to overwhelm you with the options, but they can be really fun. And it's really probably just a matter of playing with those. All right, let's check back in with the comments. Saeed wrote, I always have my camera on when I watch your live streams. Awesome. And Ender writes, one of the channels I follow that use Ecamm had to resort to OBS to stream to What's Not, a live product selling platform. And I don't really know very much about What's Not, but I think the broader point is there are just going to be times when you'll need a variety of tools. And that's the thing I keep coming back to, is that these are just options in your creative toolbox. So you can reach for them when it makes sense to reach for them. Sometimes you don't want to use OBS. Maybe it would make more sense to use something else. That's totally fine. The great thing about OBS though is it's free, so you don't have to worry and feel guilty about paying, you know, $50 a month to not use it. So that's something you can keep in mind. The chat support is saying, don't forget to like and subscribe. Yes, that's always appreciated if you want to do that. That would be really, really awesome. All right, so I don't know actually how many of you actually even have a podcast. So there's a really good chance that you might want to take these ideas and apply them to other things as well. I just want to double check my notes in case there was anything else that I was going to cover today that I've forgotten about. So recording your own side of the conversation for an interview, whether that's video or audio. Also getting that content for those clips. Changing how you show up on webcam to incorporate some of your podcast's branding and images, working with the virtual camera. It doesn't necessarily need to feature you on camera. So I feel like we've probably hit most of those marks today, which is really good because I didn't really have a list in front of me. So that's really cool. So even if you don't have a quote unquote podcast, it can be a really good way of working to create short videos, long videos, screen capture videos, all kinds of things. So I'm curious, if you have been watching today, is there a particular feature that maybe caught your idea that you'd like to explore a little bit more? And if so, what is that? Let me know in the chat. I'd love to hear that from you. The other thing I should mention too is that, and I'm never really organized enough to do this properly, but let's just roll with it. If we go to johnlacey.com/OBS news, in fact, let me hit that. It'll take you to LinkedIn. This is where the OBS Obsessed newsletter is. So you can go in here and find sort of written instructions and previous sessions and videos. And you can find all that good stuff. It is over on LinkedIn. I know not everybody loves LinkedIn. I don't really love LinkedIn, if I'm being honest. But it's just the place that I decided to house that. So if that is something that might be of interest to you, you can check it out. So OBS Obsessed newsletter, which you can find at johnlacey.com/OBS news. And I'll just put that into the chat. All right, so I guess the big takeaway for Ender this week is that he will use OBS more when he changes to light mode. So yeah, absolutely. Check out those settings, adjust the theme in the appearance section. Again, check out all the, I say that, it's probably going to be a terrible time sync, but you know, if you want to check that out, you can check that out over on OBS Project. They've got a whole bunch of different themes. And again, if you want something light, it's often just a setting away. So I don't know that it's interesting. And like I said, the main reason I go with the default is just because it is literally the default. So I could go, okay, I could work like this. It's not terrible, but again, everyone has different preferences. And the great thing about this is you get to choose. It's your OBS installation. You can do whatever you like with it. All right, so don't forget to check out the OBS Obsessed newsletter, which is over at johnlacey.com/OBS news. Have a great week, everybody. Have a great weekend when you get there. And next week on the show, I'm alternating my live shows in 2025. So I'll be doing Learn Live Streaming Live, which is more generally live streaming content. Although next week, I have a feeling I'm going to do a bit of OBS stuff. So definitely check that out as well. And Ender is saying also that he's going to set up an account on OBS Project too. So to actually sort of respond to the forums. And it's a great place to actually ask questions and get feedback and all those good things. So have a great week. Thank you everybody so much for joining me today. And I will talk to you again very, very soon.